Well, what I'm hoping to see is a little bit more sustainability. Like I mentioned, I think I've already mentioned it twice of being such a contributor to fast fashion. And we do have the costume houses that do rentals, which is really awesome. But I'm hoping as we move forward and, as we're trying to be more conservative with our resources, with our natural resources, we can find a way to not contribute as much to those kind of industries. And how can we, a lot of these clothes, they're worn one time and then they're put in a box and put into storage. Um, there has to be a better way to recycle and repurpose, so many garments, even custom made ones. And to that, I mean, another thing is, I hope in the future costume designers are going to get a little bit more credit for what they're creating. We sign our contracts that whatever we create belongs to the studio we're working for, the network we're working for. And that makes sense to a degree, but these costumes that maybe were your design and were your brainchild, they can be made into Halloween costumes. They can be merchandised, and you don't get a single even acknowledgement for it. Not even about the money, but even just about the credit of what we do. So it's not as interesting as the example that you gave, which I love that your husband said, of being able to click on the screen and be able to access a costume. But that's my hope for what the next 20 years of costume design is. Just a little bit more consciousness about what we're doing to our environment, to our world, and also hopefully a little bit more credit for the work we're putting in.
Yeah, I think I had thought about what you said in for one of the earlier questions. I think that given the streaming and this sort of content bubble that we've been in, um, you know, the timeline and the crunch to produce a show or a feature is shortening. And you still need to produce the same amount of costumes, the same level of design, and it's very stressful, right? The studios and whomever need to find a way to increase profits, and that part is, it takes a toll on you as a designer, but also just you as a person. And so I think that in the future, I would hope to see that balanced better. These are parts of the what our unions and guilds help us with to some degree. However, I I don't know that that will balance out the way it should, but there is some hope for that there will be some better production quality. And as far as where I see costumes going in the future, personally, I think there's going to be a blurrier line between sort of animation and costume, particularly in fantasy and superhero style films, as the cost of producing a physical garment increases because you're trying to kind of one up the last Marvel movie and you're trying to do something more intense. I think more films are starting to actually just use costumes that are only illustrated in VFX after the fact. So they don't actually ever produce a physical costume. I anticipate that there'll be more of that, which is good and bad. The costume designer is still involved in what that costume looks like and how it moves. However, the fun of costume designing is creating the physical garment and sort of that feeling of it coming together and watching it move and fit and work and function. So I think that's where we're going. Do I think it's necessarily a good thing? Not for sure, but I think that will be an advancement.
So my answer to this, and it's like not a very good answer because your husband's answer is very good, I think. But when I think about the business, when I started, there were no computers. I mean, it's. I don't think I could have really imagined what was going to happen 30 years from the time I started. And so if I'm looking ahead another 20 years, it's really, really hard with technology. It's just so hard to know what direction it's going to go in. I mean, I feel like, 3D will probably come in. I mean, it already is if you wear the right goggles. And, there's certain things that, but I could see things being 3D in the living room, like, walking around your living room as a set piece. Um, but actually, what could happen in the future for costumes? I have more trepidation actually for the physical aspect of costumes because fabric sources are drying up. So if you're doing a period piece, I always joke about it, but I say, in 20 years, we're all going to be doing, period pieces out of upholstery stores. And I mean, it's already happening for some historical pieces like, Elizabethan and that type of thing. But that's the place that I hope I never have to go. I mean, we always still seem to manage to find viable things, and I think also if we can expand into markets beyond North America and Europe.
So for the interview, I read the script and then I put together a mood board, and this might be photographs of outfits or characters or textures or colors. It's really to give the mood of the character and the project, and also to start as a starting point to have the conversation with the director and producers. Because what you might be thinking, it might be completely different than what they had in mind, and vice versa. So after that, if they offer me the job, there's usually negotiations that go on. And so now I have an agent, so my agent usually does the negotiating for me. And then once we can come to an agreement, then I would hire some key positions in the department. I would hire a supervisor, an assistant designer. And then once I have those core people in place, I would start doing more research on the characters and creating more mood boards for those characters, and then have meetings, like pre-production meetings with the other departments, and go through the script and talk about any information that might be helpful, or thoughts. And then we start set prepping for fittings. So either we start building things or shopping, and we start fitting once we get cast. So, and then obviously other members of the department are hired, but usually the costume supervisor does that. So I focus mostly on the design process.
You just heard from Lindsay Keir, owner of The Costume Consultant and the sponsor of today's video. Are you interested in working in the costume industry but don't know how to get started? The Costume Consultant, created by Lindsay Keir, is a service specifically designed to support your dream of finding costume jobs as well as advancing your career. There is a common misconception that costuming work is only for people who live in cities like Los Angeles or New York, but this simply isn't true. Lindsay has been part of costume teams all over the world, including Canada, the United States, Australia, and Hong Kong, and she can help you turn your passion into your career as well. So set up a free 10-minute discovery call with Lindsay. Click on the link in the description below and begin your journey today.